I am doing a quick late night audio only Periscope because once again, I'm in bed, I'll be honest. And I just thought I would mention something real quickly. So while people are coming in, I'm going to remind you that I would really like you to be part of Citizen Journalism School. If you are not already, I made a video for you over at citizenjournalismschool.com that explains why I started it and how you can get involved and what you'll get when you get involved. And we are trying to create an army of fact-based journalists who do the kind of journalism that I've done for 12 years, always ahead of the story, always factual, always right, and not believing or falling for the web of lies that we're fed. So let's get into that now. And by the way, I hope you're doing great tonight. So I wanted to understand how the Mueller indictments are working. I want you to understand that the Mueller indictments fit into, and I ran out of room to describe fully the way they work in the title, which is, I want you to consider four aspects. The Mueller indictments, the media, so think of these as four quadrants. The Mueller indictment, the media, politicians, and think tanks. Now, think tanks, let me just define that term, because I'm using it broadly here. I mean political groups, 501c3s, NGOs, and so on. And people often don't consider the effect that they have. But I will tell you, living in Washington now, there's thousands of these groups. They're everywhere. They're taking up the office buildings. They're everywhere. And what they do is they provide material that the media and politicians use, and in some cases, Mueller, to do this. Now, by the way, this is all pretty clearly coordinated, but let's just talk about what's going on, because you have to understand the Mueller indictments are not A, counterintelligence investigation, and B, they're not even legally useful or valid. So let's just go over that first part real quickly. If Mueller were actually doing a counterintelligence investigation, he would never have indicted the dozen Russians that he did right around the Helsinki Accord. In fact, the timing of Mueller's indictments is one indication that they are part of a narrative. They're pieces that are there to fill in a narrative. The way he handled the Roger Stone arrest shows it was done for maximum drama. That's clear. And so that's why the CNN cameras were allowed to be there. How they got there is another thing, but they were done for maximum drama. So the Mueller indictments exist as sort of post that you can then string the rest of the narrative on. Mueller does an indictment, then the media reports on the indictment. And you'll notice that the media treats all these indictments as though they're true. Let's take the 12 Russians. Now, why do I say that's not a counterintelligence investigation? Once again, I want to credit my friend Kelly for this insight. But if you have a spy ring, and I've talked to ex-CIA people about this, John Kiriakou, Philip Giraldi, and I've said to him, look, if you've got a group of spies and you know who they are, FSB agents, you know their address, you know their name, you know the office they work out of, you know what they did. If you've got that group, do you as a CIA agent or officer, what do you do? Do you indict that? Or do you feed them fake information, feed them stuff? Because here's the thing, if you know who they are, and they don't know you know who they are, there's a lot of things you can do. And that's the way counterintelligence works. That's the way every spy agency works. Mueller, and you can better believe he did not indict the 12 Russians that he named but didn't prove, he did not indict them without consulting the intelligence agencies, right? No way that happened. No possible way. So therefore, they were okay with it. So the purpose of it, and there's no legal purpose, since he knew he would never be able to get those people extradited. He wasn't stopping them from committing other crimes because, by the way, they're still free. If he's right, think about this. If he's right, what's to keep this FSB agents, okay, they caught us somehow, from just going on to more secure computers and solving the problem that way? Now, again, I don't believe his indictment. I believe he falsely named 12 people who may or may not be connected with Russian intelligence. They may not be real people. But here's the point. Whatever I think, you didn't see one critical story about this in the media. You did not see one single critical story about this from the mainstream media saying, who the hell are these guys and why don't we have any proof? In fact, what the media says is that the indictment is proof. They say Robert Mueller's charged 12 Russians, and then they act like, well, that settles it. He's indicted the Russians, therefore the Russians did it. That's not the way the legal system works. When you don't present any evidence whatsoever that they did what you're saying, and if you read the indictment, there's no evidence presented, and no one's shown up in court, and no guilty verdict has been found, the legal system says that they're innocent until proven guilty. But even principles of journalism would say, you don't start calling people guilty when you don't have proof that they're guilty. And trust me, Jake Tapper, who did this just the other night, has no proof that these people are guilty. Now, then you have to understand how the think tanks work. The think tanks are groups like the Atlantic Council, the Organized Crime Reporting Project, the Institute of Modern Russia, George Soros' Open Society Foundation, all the groups that it funds, including the ones I just mentioned, by the way. Now, what they do is they bolster the false media reporting on the indictments. So they'll repeat it. They'll say stuff like, the Atlantic Council will say, Mueller's indictments that prove Russia's behind it point to a deeper problem. Then they'll go off on something else. So the point is, Ayn Rand, I was a big Ayn Rand fan when I was a teen. I went to Ayn Rand's funeral. I've been in Ayn Rand's apartment. Never met her. But when Leonard Peikoff had her apartment, it was there. And she's still an influence on my thinking. And one brilliant point that Ayn Rand brought up was something called the stolen concept, where she noticed that people would sneak premises into arguments, and you're just supposed to accept them, even though the premise is not proven, and it's just taken for granted. So that's what you're seeing here. What you're seeing here is they'll be making a point about geopolitics, and they'll talk about the Kerch Strait incident in Ukraine, and then go, but we already know the Russians hacked the election or whatever. You see this all the time. In fact, I would argue that most of the stuff you hear about Russia, Crimea, Syria, here's what the objections are about Russia. Here's why Russia's a rogue state. Crimea, Syria, they hacked our election, then they used this Kerch Strait incident, then they used the Skripal poisoning. I'm going to point out something. None of those stories, when you drill down on them, are actually proven. Every one of those stories has as much proof as Russians hacked the election. But you know what? Every website, and I mean Breitbart, I can show you articles on Breitbart, sites on the right, sites on the left, obviously, they all accept that premise. Even Fox accepts the premise. I just say it every time it comes up. There's no proof for it whatsoever. But the role of these think tanks, NGOs, and other groups, 501c3s and so on, is to repeat the lie. Repeat the lie. Oh, it's proven. It's proven. Oh, it's proven. Or repeat some part of the narrative. Now, the final part, the fourth quadrant that I want to mention here, and the last thing I want to get to, is politicians. Here's the way this works. You can see this with the Roger Stone thing right now. There are politicians out there right now, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Nancy Pelosi, whatever you think about them, who are straight up lying. This indictment of Roger Stone shows no direct connection between Roger and Julian Assange whatsoever. If you read the indictment, there is not a line in there that makes it clear. But the way the media works and the politicians work is, see, the reason Mueller didn't say there's a direct connection. And by the way, I want you to note something. Roger Stone testified that he was not in front of the House, that he was not in contact with Julian Assange or anyone at WikiLeaks. Now, Byron York had a great piece on this that I highly recommend you read. So I want to give credit where it's due. Byron York is the one who pointed, I may have talked about it before, but it was such a good article that he pointed out Mueller did not indict Roger Stone for lying to Congress about having direct contact with either Julian Assange or WikiLeaks. I'm going to say that again. Robert Mueller did not indict Roger Stone for saying that he had no direct contact with Roger Stone, with Julian Assange or anyone at WikiLeaks. It's right in the indictment. It's very clear. And we know he said it because it came out in the House reports. Don't forget, they have not released the transcript, which is a whole nother issue. But bits of it have come out in 2 House reports. Okay. So where you're at here is if he did not get indicted by the Mueller, then that's pretty good proof that Roger Stone had no direct contact with Julian Assange, since it's very clear. But you don't hear the media saying that, but you hear the media and politicians. Nancy Pelosi will just say, well, this indictment proves they're Roger Stone. No, it doesn't. It doesn't prove it at all. But see, then what happens is the media picks up on the politician's lie and repeats that. This is about a mechanism for repeating lies over and over again. Here's why. If they repeat lies over and over again, you, whoever you are, start to go, I don't know, maybe Roger did do something wrong. I don't know, all these people are talking about it. In your head, you're just like, well, there must be, it's this, where there's smoke, there's fire. But as my co-host on Fault Lines with Nixon and Stranahan, Garland Nixon said, he said, as anybody who remembers disco remembers, sometimes where there's smoke, there's just a smoke machine. There's no fire whatsoever. What you're seeing with the Mueller indictment is a smoke machine. And part of that smoke machine is the media, and part of that smoke machine are these 501c3s. They're all almost, I've shown this, almost every one of these groups is funded or supported directly by Soros. Then there's the politicians. And by the way, it's no accident, because Soros is a big Hillary funder. And because Soros funds the 2 things, the left and the military-industrial complex. And that's why, by the way, why there's no anti-war movement, because he decimated it. He's talked the left into being pro-war and pro-deep state. And that's the most frightening thing I can imagine. I'll be honest with you. He has successfully talked the left into supporting the endless war machine, the CIA, the NSA, the DOJ. The left broadly, when you get Kamala Harris saying, well, you know, we don't want to withdraw the troops too soon. The only thing the Democrats agree with the president on is every bad foreign policy decision Donald Trump has made. That is also supported by Pompeo and Bolton. You'll see that on this Venezuela thing over and over again. So you got to be very careful. You got to be very careful what's happening. The facts are very clear, but there's a mesh of lies, and I wanted to explain the mechanism a little. Now do me a favor. Retweet this puppy. We try to let people figure out the truth on their own. No pandering, no insulting their intelligence You're smart enough to figure this out. You're smart enough to see what's going on. This is much deeper than partisan politics. The wealthy and powerful are scared to death that you can now research and communicate with people around the world. You never had this ability before. You, as a regular human being, never had this ability. And now you're starting to realize all the bullshit you've been fed by governments, by corporations, by the deep state, which is the CIA, but by elitists. You're seeing it. They were freaked out because they saw how big Occupy Wall Street and the Tea Party got. Remember 2007? Remember the bank collapses? Notice that no one's suffered for that? I mean, people have. No one went to jail, though. The people who perpetrated that fraud. In fact, many of them are still in office. They are scared to death of you. They saw what was happening in Occupy. They saw what was happening with the Tea Party, which were two reactions on the left and right to that. They co-opted both those movements. And now, they are scared to death that you'll figure out the bullshit they're pulling with Iran, the bullshit they're pulling with Venezuela, the bullshit they're pulling all across the Middle East, with Ukraine. They are scared to death. It hasn't hit your wallet yet, but this is what they're worried about. And they're worried with the bank collapse and people's mortgages going upside down. So they're desperately trying to avoid that. But they're still making all these moves to preserve their empire, their financial empire, their physical empire. It's not about democracy. It's not about human rights. That's the bullshit that they give you. If you're on the right, they feed you the line about patriotism and democracy, and we're against socialism, and that's why we're going into Venezuela. If you're on the left, they talk about human rights abuses, and they bring out people like Soros as a defender of human rights. This is about money, pure and simple. This is about money, and it's about energy, oil resources, gas pipelines. That's what Syria's about. That's what Ukraine's about. That's what this is all about. And Russia and China are the only people in any position to call bullshit on this. And the danger is that the United States is losing enough credibility around the world. In Venezuela, they know what's up. They know the U.S. is not interested in their human rights or democracy or freedom. They know they want the oil. They're not stupid. The common people are not stupid. And that's the truth. And this is what the elites are scared to death of. They are freaked the fuck out by you being smarter. And that's why every day I attempt to make you smarter. That's what I try to do. I try to make you more capable of thinking on your own, thinking for yourself, seeing through the bullshit, and doing journalism a fundamentally different way than everybody else, really almost everybody else who I know. I got a list of journalists who I like, plenty of people on the left and right, a few dozen, but you know what I'm saying. This is not the way journalism's done. And the sites that are great, Mint Press and Disobedient Media and 21st Century Wire and, all those sites. And there's good information all over the place. You can find on any website, left or right, plenty of information, but watch out for the analysis. That's what's going on. Anyway, love you guys. Talk to you later. Bye.